Welcome, everybody, to the ninth episode of Negotiate This. Educating, what are we calling this? We're calling this Educating the Educator in Us All. And today I've got CEO Stu Semigran and founder of Educare Foundation. You're going to hear all about Stu and the wonderful work that he and his organization are doing with our children and with their parents, and the unification and the communication and the sharing of respect and love in the family dynamic, and touching them at the school level and then bringing that home into homes. And these are kids and families that do not come from privilege. And Stu's going to tell us more about this. And without further ado, I want to introduce you all to my dear friend Stu Semigran. And Stu, let's just fire it up by
sounds good.
Articulate what is Educare and what is the mission of Educare, and from your perspective.
Great. Well, thanks first, Nick, for inviting me on, and for everyone who's joining us today. It's a pleasure to be with you. Take this time. And Educare's mission is about inspiring and empowering young people to live from their hearts. And we call it become compassionate leaders who give back into their communities. And one part of our mission is that they can create and live a dream, a life that's a dream of theirs. A lot of our kids from the inner city, they may not think much beyond just what's in front of their face. But part of what we're doing is inviting them and training them and preparing them to create a big life for themselves. So it's been a lifelong work of mine. I came in as a school teacher in LAUSD back 40 years ago. And soon after, I ventured out with my wife to start Educare, to open up more doors for the kids that we served inside the school. So there's a lot to say, but it's a joy to be with you today and share some of our principles and how we work with kids.
Yeah, and I really, for those of you listening in, we're going to also talk about some tools and techniques that you can use as parents with your kids to open those doors of communication and create some ways where you can share and demonstrate your love of them, and then receive their love of you, however they choose to express it, right? I mean, when you have teenagers, sometimes a grunt is "I love you." So
that's on a good day.
That's on a good day. So
right.
How do we decipher that, and not take the grunt personally, but say, oh, that's a communication that is love. But staying on the origin of Educare, you and I were talking yesterday, Stu, and you were talking about at a young age, as a young adult, that you knew you wanted to do this work because there was a family business and you could have stepped into that. But what was that inside of you that says, I want to take care of kids?
Yeah. Well, I was going to be the first Jewish doctor in our family, so everyone thought. And then after that, that was my mom's dream. My dad's dream was to run his lingerie factory downtown Manhattan. But I realized where my love was with kids. I used to be a summer camp counselor upstate New York for kids from New York City. And I realized that's where my heart led. So when I started teaching inside of LAUSD, and I was teaching history and math at a middle school level, but where my interest really took me was to do more for those kids. And the way I looked at it is I just wanted to wake them up. That was one way I described it. I said, they're coming in and they don't see the possibility of what their lives could become. And I just saw that. I could see my kids past all the craziness. I saw what a life could be for them. And that took me into changing up the way I taught. And soon after that, after about 7 years inside of the classroom, my wife Candy and I co-founded Educare to bring out more of waking kids up through discovering themselves, bringing in a lot of the principles from business or peak performance and athletics. How do those folks use it? How can my kids use it and elevate themselves? So that was the beginning of Educare back in late 80s inside of LAUSD, and then it turned into a foundation that we started in 1990.
And so what is the dynamic of Educare? How do you apply what Educare is to the school, to a kid? How does a kid experience Educare?
Yeah, we come at it in a few different ways. We're working with some of the toughest schools in the toughest neighborhoods. We're servicing about 30,000 kids across 100 schools inside of LA area. And of those, we have 29 sites that every day, it's like having a Boys and Girls Club right on your campus after school on Saturdays, on holidays, on summer breaks, and Educare takes care of all of that at no charge to their families. And it's the academics after school, so all the things from college prep to tutorials to computers. It's also the enrichments, the musics, the arts, the sciences, the recreation, the fitness, all of that. We kind of bring them right in. So the school is it's a one-stop shopping for kids to really develop themselves. And then we do a lot of work with their parents, where we host parent workshops on communication and how to support your kids. And then we wrap around and work with the teachers, because we said it's not enough just to service kids unless the teachers are in on how do I teach in new ways to connect to my kids, to build relationships in my classrooms, to listen deeper to my kids, to see past their behaviors into what they're dealing with, which is a lot, because I could see, I'm trying to teach a math class when I was a teacher, said that isn't even crossing into their awareness because they're dealing with life. And if we don't approach life with them, then they're not going to take to the academics. So we look at it, we call it heart set. How do you build a heart set education to develop a mind that's clear, but the heart that carries for the kids, that loves the kids, and then they carry that forward in their relationships with themselves and with each other. So it's been a wonderful journey, and it continues, and we're in a lot of permutations now inside of the work we're doing in terms of kids staying at home and learning at home, and we're kind of moving along with that to help the kids nonetheless.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that dynamic as well. So you've got a kid who expresses an interest to want to be in the program. Uh, Two questions. One is there resistance from the teachers that because the teacher didn't sign up when they signed a contract for the Educare program and that methodology of teaching? Have you found that there has ever been some friction between, let's start with the teacher and the programs that and the ethos of what you're trying to create?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of evolved over time, because our work isn't to come in and go, you're not doing it right, school or teachers, and we got the magic wand. That's not what we're about. We're working in really close partnership with the schools and the teachers, and they look at us as a resource. And a lot of the teachers are aware of that they have to find some other way to reach their kids past the academics, because it's often been said that kids don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. So we're bringing in that element of building relationships. So they come to us saying, can you help in your after school programs with these lessons, with these types of curriculum? So we're working quite in partnership with them. In fact, some of the teachers sign on to work with us after school as part of our staff, but not in their academic area. They may, I want to teach hip hop, I want to teach cooking. Let me have my kids see me from a different light, and then they kind of gravitate and work with us in wonderful ways. So we're partners. We're not in any way competing with teachers.
Great. Well, kids can see their teacher in a more humanistic light, right? If they're teaching the guitar class. So how do you define this curriculum? How's that established?
Yeah. Well, because with programs like this, when kids are younger and we work with middle and high school age kids, parents say you got to go. But with high school kids, we all know they get to choose more. So we listen carefully to what the kids are asking for, what they want. And our phrase is, where school meets your interests. So we survey kids, we talk to kids. One great example, and I shared I think this with you yesterday, Nick, is we had a group of kids in San Fernando High School, Latino population. And they came to us and said, could we have you guys lead a Korean language class? And we said, what do you want to learn Korean language for? None of you are Korean. You don't. Well, the best games are coming out of Korea online, and we want to know that language so we can get into the gaming with them. So before we knew it, we said, find us a Korean teacher. It's on you. Bring together at least 20 kids. We'll underwrite it all. Before we knew it, it was one of the most popular classes at the school because it came from the kids. So we're listening. If it's music, if it's computers, if it's science, we have kids doing robotics and engineering. They let us know where their interests rest. And then that's where it really takes off, because we're not pushing it on them. They choose back in. It's all voluntary. They don't have to come to our programs, but the energy starts to build, and we have hundreds of kids a day on school campuses all around the city who are just involved with learning at a really exciting level.
That's beautiful. And so there's got to be a minimum level of demand. There's got to be a certain microcosm of kids that want to invest in one curriculum before it can happen, right? Otherwise, you've got 1,000 kids and you got 1,000 different interests. It's tough to service all of those kids.
Exactly. There's usually 20 level where we enter into a class with the kids. And we have our options. The principals and administrators say, hey, we really want to focus on math at the 9th grade level. Can you help us in after school? Or we want to build leadership. Or we want to build a sense of more interest in terms of science and STEM. We'll listen to the teachers, we'll listen to the administrators and the kids, and we develop programs around their interests.
Right. And how about the parents? So if a kid hears about the program, how do you deal with a reticent parent?
Yeah. Well, we
And
do.
does that exist even?
Well, at the high school level, the schools are working, the parents are really, they're excited and they're happy that the kids have something that's safe, that's educational. A lot of our parents, they're not home after school. There's no one home. And they're happy that the kids are at a really safe place. We have parent involvement where they're coming and they're part of our programs with us. We do some back to school events where we bring all the kids together. It's not just come and visit the school. And we work with the parents separately. The kids will go out and they'll have a team builder program inside of the gym. The parents will be with us in the auditorium. How do you prepare yourself as a parent of a 9th grader? And what is some of the tips we can provide you? How do you communicate some of the deeper levels of concerns they may have? How do you get to that level? And then before we know it, we bring the kids and the parents together and we do some family conversations, which is very important to us. So the parents get the support, the kids get to know that they're in a community at the school, but also how do they then build a backside inside of their family. So we're doing a lot of how do we make that as a seamless kind of teachers, parents, kids, a triangle. We're all in this together, isn't just send the kids to school and hope they come out well a couple of years from now.
Right. And so you're in that room with the parents. Are there core principles that you want to communicate? How does that go? So
Yeah.
for all the parents out there listening to maybe a little help, how do I communicate with that 9th grader in my own family? What has that look like?
Yeah, we have 8 major skills. We call them heart set skills. And one of them is called empathetic listening. How to listen in deeper ways. We call it heart-centered listening. And I've had parents come up to me and go, well, my son, daughter, they never listen to me. And part of the conversation, when we're being honest, is like, well, how's the listening coming from you to them rather than instructing or telling and teaching? So how do parents slow it down, calm themselves down, listen more deeply, and we give them some training on that. And then when they're with the kids have been trained similarly, they find out there's a depth of listening that they haven't had before. And a lot of it has to do with appreciation. You've been, I think, inside of 1 or 2 of our programs where the parents and the kids, they look for the best in one another rather than what's wrong with you today or how come you didn't do that today. So looking past the behavior into more of that, there's something in there. Maybe they're troubled or maybe something's off, but let me catch them at their best rather than always find them at their worst and point it out to them. So we're doing a lot of honoring and a lot of deep listening.
Mm. And for someone who isn't accustomed to that, it's a muscle that we build, right?
Exactly.
How do you help support a parent who's, they're just carrying forward how they were raised as a kid, right? And it's what you didn't do as opposed to opening that door to say, hey, let's recognize what you did do and in a positive light. What kind of support can you give to those that really need that?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, the first person we always work with, be it the kid or the parent or the teacher, is how do you do that for yourself? Relationships are going to, teachers are always saying, give me the lessons. I can teach
Stu,
things.
let me ask, do you have a cell phone close to you and are you on your Wi-Fi at home?
I have my cell phone close to me. Yeah.
Can you turn off your Wi-Fi if your phone is using that? Because it may be pulling because you broke up there a little bit, and I want to capture every syllable of what you're saying. That
Okay.
seems to help at my house. So
Let me do that.
great.
Okay, that's off now.
Great. So share that again. Starts with ourselves, right? So
Right.
please continue that thought.
Yeah. So if we're having a hard time seeing the best in our kids, it may be that we're having a hard time seeing the best in ourselves. If we're being super critical with our kids, it may be that our dialogue, our self-talk is super critical with ourselves. So a lot of the work we're doing with parents or teachers is how do you do that for yourself? And then you'll see the best and you'll be able to look and see that in others. So it's reflective work, it's honest work. Parents sometimes, what are you talking about? Well, what's the good news about you as a parent today? Well, we can all, I used to come back from teaching my classes at school, go, I could tell you all the kids I messed up with today, but guess what? There's probably 10 times more kids that I did tremendously well. Let me catch myself at my best rather than always criticize myself at my worst. So a lot of it is that personal development that then trickles over to a relationship that you have with others.
And is there a, a distillation of the top two things just to consider for yourself? I really want to make it as micro accessible as possible for people, for them to consider if they're in a tough moment.
Yeah.
How would you answer that?
Well, I think the awareness of like, take a deep breath,
Mm.
check out what's triggering me right now. And might it be that I'm judging not just that son or daughter of me, but maybe I'm not doing a good job as a parent right now. What am I lacking? What am I not seeing? And go, can I forgive myself and go, give myself a break? I can remember times when I would have to go up to my son or the kids at school and go, you know what? This is not one of my better days. I'm just telling you, I'm doing my best to relax, but if I'm not at my best, and that vulnerability, that honesty, and then also what can I do to self-care myself to up level in terms of my ability to relate to other people. So a lot of times I say, give myself a timeout before I give my kid a timeout. Yeah.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I really appreciate that, Stu. Those are pearls of wisdom. You shared something with me yesterday. Would you define the meaning of educare, please?
Yeah. I mean, the most obvious is, caring education, and we take it as such. But when we first developed the name, we heard of it through the Latin word educare, which means to bring forward that which is already within, to bring forward what's already inside that young person. And perhaps part of our awareness as adults could I see past the behavior to the promise and the future and the prospect of who that child is, my son or a student. And so a lot of it is, can we see the best of that person? Can I bring out what's already in there versus I have to give them everything, the education, the right direction. And I know we all want to guide our kids, but what if more of what it is, can I bring forward what's already in there? Can I catch them? For instance, my son, I thought he was going to be a star. In my mind, he's my Major League Baseball son. In his mind, he was like, baseball, give me a break. And where he was coming from was math and science. I said, well, guess what? I'm going to go there. And when I just kind of supported him, not only does he love math and science, he's an engineer now, but he's a great old athlete and sports fan like I am. So just kind of catch them at theirs, what's of interest to them versus throw ourselves inside of them.
Well, I think there's a great reflection in the way you allow the kids to bring the curriculum present to you as to what interests them. How many times did I force one of my kids to do what I thought they should be doing as opposed to receiving what they want to do? Because that's what creates the dynamic uh, of an openness, right? And
Exactly.
a nurturing support.
Exactly. We had just a story with that. I was teaching a class in Israel in an Israeli Arab school. And one of the teachers on the first day, this goes back about 15 years, he said to me, watch out for this kid over here. And I thought, what's up? I said, what, why? He says, he's going to be your troublemaker. And I understood he was trying to protect me. Like, I don't want you to have a tough time with my kids.
Mm.
And I asked him, what does that kid do well? He says, well, he's a good artist. He's a good drawer. So over the next few days, when I needed a kid to do a poster or do a banner, this kid was the kid we went to. And before we knew it, this kid was not a troublemaker anymore. He was one of our stars. And I thought, okay, if we can redirect what we're looking, what eyes do I look through and see the best of the possibility versus the worst of the trouble, that's what I'm going to draw forward from inside the kid.
Mm.
That's how we work with our kids as best we can.
I love it. And how do you engage a negative mindset? And a kid says, "I can," or "I'm going to screw it up." How do you work with them through that?
Yeah. Well, I think part of that is rather than combat it, is just to listen to it at first. Just kind of take that kid, and it may be just why, why? Why would you be saying that? And perhaps there's fear, perhaps there's lack of interest, and it may be well, can you take note of some of the things that you're doing well and build from their strengths? So a lot of the work we do initially when we're working with groups of kids uh, is to have them self-assess their own strengths. And it's very unusual because they're always looking at, I screwed up, my parents told me I screwed up, or this. Can you start looking at some, and we do something we call strength circles. And we do this with parents and kids together, which is delightful, where we have them sit together and they give each other a sheet and they go, write down all the strengths that you see in me. What? And just write it down. And then they get to exchange their papers and go, you know, Mom, why'd you write that? Tell me why. Well, I wrote down you're helpful because, and they get to hear through their parents or their sons or daughters' eyes, another person's positive view of them, which is usually never the case. And then they get to reflect on what they also see of themselves, and they get to share that as well. And it builds the habit of looking past behavior into a deeper level of possibility and acknowledgement. So honoring, we call it self-honoring and praising of another. That's one of our main principles that we teach. How to look, and not to deny that we all have work to do and there's things that we're short on, but to kind of assess ourselves through giving ourselves the best versus the worst view of ourselves.
I love that. Well, what a great technique for parents and their kids to engage in a strength circle,
Yeah.
and that's beautiful, beautiful. So I've got to imagine, and I don't want to assume anything, but those kids come in for the first time, and there's going to be this body language, right? And how do you, if they see the difference in skin color, they see whatever their judgments, how do you develop trust in with those kids and their parents when they're coming at it cold?
Excellent, excellent. Well, a few things about our work. Our kids, about 95% of our population is kids of color, about 85% of our staff similarly. I come in, other white, male, female, we come in. And I think what the kids are looking for, it's easier probably from people of color, if you're of color, but they're looking just for who is this person? Who is this guy? And so building a sense of genuine regard, a genuine relationship is important. It's been said, I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, that kids don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. So if I'm not here to go, I'm the teacher, no, I'm here with you and we're going to learn together, they get the sense of being genuine. And the same thing with parents. Not that we're the experts, we know it all, but can we learn together? So there's a sense of humanness, of authenticity, of being vulnerable together, of being respectful together, having fun together. And that builds over time, that sense of relationship. I think as in business and everywhere, a lot of it's based on genuine relationship. And the kids, I used to teach math and history, but I thought before they're going to learn any of that, they have to know I'm in their corner. I'm someone who really believes in them. I'm with them. I listen to them. I'm checking in with them. I care about them. So that's kind of how we come at it.
And I would imagine there's word of mouth, right? The people that have been through, the kids that have been through the programs and their parents, that must be an asset for you as well to help bridge that into trust that much faster. Yes.
Exactly. I mean, people say, how come more and more kids are coming to your programs? And a lot of it is kids are the best recruiters of other kids. They know our staff, and we have tremendous staff with Educare. We have about 150 instructors and 50 full-time staff members managing it throughout the city. And these are, a lot of our instructors are kids who came, we have 20% of our staff were students in the same high schools 5, 10, 15 years ago. And then now they're young professionals. They come back into their schools. They're now engineers, they're lawyers, whatever they are, and they come back of interest to give back inside of the school. So the kids can relate to them as, I see you're one of me, and look what you've become. And they become those positive role models to the kids, and it really helps them so much. And they care.
Yeah, they wouldn't come back if they didn't, right? And I think it's also such a testimony to the work you're doing that it so moved them that they want to give back as well. I mean,
Yeah,
Educare is a nonprofit organization, correct?
that's right.
Yeah. And so, what are the stats, success rates
Yeah,
of your kids that go through the program?
yeah. One of the, I think, in addition to that, so many are now part of our staff. I think one of the most outstanding stats is that kids who have been with us in high school for 4 years and they opt in. They don't have to come. But the ones who stay with us over 4 years, they're graduating at a 23% higher graduation rate than the same kids at the schools who are not part of our programs. In fact, their daily attendance, people going, how come your kids are coming more often to daytime classes? A lot of them is they're excited about after school, they're excited about learning. So graduation rates are up. Another big factor that's coming up is kids who are new into the country. A lot of our kids are new immigrants, and language acquisition is important. And we have kids, and I think I have the stat here, 13% higher reclassification of our kids into learning language in their first or second year inside of that school than kids who are not part of our program. So not only are we socializing the kids, but we're raising them up math, English language skills, graduation rates, and many of them are into career paths. We have kids coming out of high school. In fact, Bell High School this year, one of the poorest neighborhoods of LA, who 2-3 years ago were way back on the academics in terms of the academic decathlon, was #1 across all the valley schools and the schools that have higher levels of income of all the city in the academic decathlon. And that was one of our main clubs at Bell High School. And these are kids you would go, you kidding me? And they're now soaring. They went up to the States. I think they placed in the top 10 in the state of California from some of the poorest neighborhoods and we have kids now in national robotics competitions. You know, the stigma of these kids don't have it, they can't do it. We just wipe that away and go, give them the opportunities, give them the resources, and they're going to perform tremendously well. And it gives us a lot of joy. A lot of them going to some of the top universities in the country. And and I just hope people keep an open mind that opportunity provided, success follows, and support and loving people around these kids, they're going to soar. And that's part of our inspiration and joy to see how they go at it.
I can imagine, and tears must be shed all the time with the sweetness of what comes forward in that.
Yeah.
You shared with me yesterday at a baby blessing for your son that
Right.
share that the rainbow and the pot of gold, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when our son had his baby blessing, and the great advice that we received was, if you can give him a rainbow, he'll go find his pot of gold. And I heard that at the time and going, I'm a young dad. I didn't know what that meant, except what I heard was provide all that I could for him and he'll discover a great life for himself. And so we carry that into Educare, that if our kids can be given rainbows of opportunities, given opportunities to venture into some of their interests, they will find a life that's worth living, that's worth serving. And so that's been part of our theme with Educare, is give them the opportunities and they'll find themselves their way through it. And that's why we have so many choices that they can venture into. And that's why a lot of our kids are doing so well, because they're given so much. These are kids who wouldn't have opportunities. Their parents couldn't afford or wouldn't give them a summer camp or a music camp or a science camp. And they would be on the streets or at home. But here they are with us and doing great things.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. So what, at this point, what is the biggest challenge in education from your perspective? What are you seeing? I mean, obviously, we're coming out of a pandemic. I'd love to know how you're reintegrating the schools, and my goodness, what is front and center, the catalyst of George Floyd and what we're all faced with now and that reality. That's a 3-part question. Okay.
Yeah.
Challenge, pandemic, racism issues.
Yeah. And I think they're all kind of adding, it isn't like you can split those apart. They're all kind of filtering in together. And in a lot of ways, I think this pandemic has provided an opportunity and the time at home for us to really reflect and see where we are, what's important and what's missing and what are we lacking. And then you put in all that's come about with George Floyd, what's come about with the social justice issues that are coming forward. And inside of education, it's really clear. I've been in a lot of conversations with educators where social injustices, you can't deny it. I mean, the schools that we serve, they're some of the most underfunded neighborhoods and underfunded schools, and it all flies in together. The families, the jobs, the healthcare, the education, it's not resourced in the same ways it is in other parts. Public education has really been hit. The state budgets, as they're getting cut back, Right now, we're talking about furloughing teachers, furloughing after-school programs. How do we keep that moving in a time when the kids need us more? How do state budgets that have less? So they're looking to the feds for money. The states, the local districts are looking to the states. We're looking inside of local districts. So part of our challenge right now is to find the resources to keep things moving when the kids need us the most. And then educationally, how to shift into teaching in ways that are all new. And our staff, hats off, within days, they were developing, okay, I'm a fitness trainer. Guess what? Get your water bottles and let's do fitness at home with what you got. Okay, I'm a cooking instructor. What do you have in your kitchen? Let's find ways to make some pies or bread or something. Let's make it work. And how do you change all that up and work with what you got? So we're dealing a lot. We're out front in terms of social injustice, that if any kids are being denied, our kids have been denied, and now it's time to come front and center that they need as much help as anyone and more right now. So we're part of that voice of educators going, let's remember the kids of color, let's remember our communities, let's resource them up rather than get frightened about what's going on. Let's look at the need that's behind all of what's going on. So there's a lot to say. I think probably more is that we bring the heart into it. We don't bring the judgment. We're looking for solutions rather than who do we point fingers at. And we're looking at to do it together. You know, as a white leader, working with a lot of leaders of color, I think a lot of my voice is, we're in this with you, and we're part of bringing the community, my contacts in the white community, in there with you. It's going to be all of us together. In fact, I think, and this is me personally, I think the white leaders are going to really show how powerful we are, part of the changes that are happening right now. And it's needed. So I'm right up there in the middle of it, and I'm learning. Part of my learning is I don't have the answers, but I got to listen. I got to learn. I got to feel for what's going on. Because our kids, they can look at me, who are you? Another man of privilege, who are you? And I'm learning up to go, well, I know where my heart is, and I know I have blind spots, and I know I'm here with you, and Educare's we're not going away. We're going to just do it better and do it with you. So that's part of us, and we're learning as an organization, and we're part of the whole community pulling together for the kids. So that's where we stand.
I love that. Share a little bit more about those blind spots, because I think I know we all have blind spots. How are you enhancing your awareness to those blind spots to become even that much more effective?
Yeah. A lot of that had to do at first is just step back and listen and not try to solve anything right out. Listen to my staff. We had some really deep, raw, heartfelt, tearful conversations where people just spoke what's going on. And we would put us on a conference, 30, 40 of us, and just listen. And a lot of it was touching. So what was I not aware of? And then for me just to read up and to learn up. My blind spots would be perhaps assuming things about, oh, that's just a line staff. I already know I run this company. Wait a minute, what am I not seeing that they can teach me? Can I be a student? Can I be more sensitive? And then looking in terms of just practical practices of how we run our business. And I know we've prided ourselves in terms of hiring from within, hiring from the community. But what can I do in terms of my board? How can I diversify my board? How can I look at biases that we didn't even know existed, where perhaps our parents aren't being heard? Why not? They're a wealth of information. Can they be a resource versus just an aside to us? Our students, why aren't we listening more to what they're telling us? Even though we do, how do we listen to them more deeply? So I look at it as a time to be a student, I'll be a partner, be honest, and know it's not a one-day affair. We're part of what I'm hearing a lot is what's going on in the community now. We said it over and over again. Can you stay with us and be a partner over time rather than back to normal next week? So that's the deeper work that we're into. What are the changes inside of systems and organizations, small and big, inside of the whole educational configuration, to make it more responsive to the needs of people?
And I mean, we're all in that learning curve right now, and we've all been catapulted into truly, hopefully, looking within first and foremost, as you're doing, and then creating space for everyone to come to their own realizations of what's working, and then also have, I believe, the the forgiveness to say, golly, I missed that. I'm not
Exactly.
doing that right.
Exactly.
And not beat ourselves up for it, to say, okay, but in this moment we can make a change. And uh, from a kid perspective, it's, how do you pick up a kid who's fallen down? How do you be there, right there with him or her in that moment, especially if there's emotion, a heightened emotional state? How how is your staff trained to deal with that too? Because there's got to be a unified perspective in all of that, right? And so what has been the origin of that, and then how is it executed?
Are you talking about individuals, your own child at home? You're talking about our kids in the community?
I'm talking about the kids in the community, because I think that becomes an extension of our kids at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think part of it is just being there.
Mm.
I mean, you know, not walking away. These are uncomfortable times, uncomfortable conversations. We thought it was going to take an hour and a half. We spent 2.5 hours with our team just listening to 40 of us. Just let's listen out. Let's hear the pain. Let's hear the hurt. Let's hear, and we're not all on our best game, but if I can just spend some time to try to listen to you more deeply, then there's a sense of you care. You're not just walking through this. You're not just dismissing it. And then being honest with what's going on for me. I mean, within the first few days, I said, I don't know what to tell my staff, but I need to put something to them from me, from my heart. And so I put out a message out, a video message to our team. And I said, and I was just, I was messed up. I said, I don't, other than there was hurt, there was sadness, there was hope, there was promise, there was possibility. All of that was mixed in together. And I go, I'm just telling you where I am. And there was appreciation going, okay, you're dealing it from your level, we're dealing it from our level. And if we're willing to deal with it together, something really good can come of it. And I think, and our management team is saying, we're closer now in the craziness of the times than we've ever been. And still with all the unknowns, are people going to get furloughed? Do we have enough to pay them through the summer? All that. But meanwhile, people going, we're talking talk like we've never talked before, getting to know each other from a very genuine level. So I think kids are asking for the same thing.
Mm.
And so one of our staff actually has an every night prom, not a staff, one of our sponsors, that they have as a conversation around their dinner table with their kids. And at first the kids go, I don't want to talk about that. And it could be very simple things like, what's important to you? What's the hardest thing you had to deal with in the last 2 months? And just open up, and guess what? When we as adults can address it, all of a sudden the kids go, that's a human being, I can address it too. So I think a lot of it is just being straight up with one another.
It sounds like you're blurring the lines of the role of I'm the kid and you're the parent, where you're bringing human beings together, and they're just different ages. It sounds like very much that's the undercurrent of
Why
creating
not?
that connectivity.
Why not? I
Right.
think the fear from teachers when we were trained is you have to keep your position, or else the kids won't respect you, they won't listen to you. And I think you can do both. Because I think anyone would go, I respect where you're coming from. You got to tell me this, but I'm with you because I know you're with me as a human being. So I can get with you behind your role. You're the teacher. I got it.
Right.
And I
Eh,
think it's the same with parents too.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Um, I'm thinking back on our son.
Stu, you're broken up a little bit there. You're still a little frozen.
How's that?
Can
Let's
Yeah,
see
that's
if I
better.
get out of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Better? Okay.
Okay.
So just being honest with our son at times, you know what? And let him know I'm doing the best I can. I'm not a perfect dad. I messed up. And not to do it out of, now feel for me, I messed up, but just going, you know what? I'm learning here. I'm learning to do better with and for you. But when I mess up, let me not just walk through it like it's not on me, it's you. No, that was on me today. And I might as well tell you that. And here's how I think I can do better. Here's what I'm going for. And I think it just builds an esteem and a respect for that myself as a parent.
Mm.
And I think we can be straight up with our kids more and more
Let's talk.
vulnerable.
Let's talk about that. And the connection may be mine. Oh, so I apologize. So if you're all hearing it, I'm the one not. That's great. Self-esteem in our kids. Uh, golly, that's just the essence of it all, is it not? How is what's the strategy? And you've shared so much about it, but is there more that you can articulate about the idea of creating self-esteem in kids?
Yeah. Well, I grew up hungry for self-esteem. I got praised a lot for what I accomplished, and I thought that was the way to go. So I would we would praise our son for what they did. And the more I'm learning about true self-esteem, it's not awards and trophies. It's about grit. It's about perseverance, about hard work. It's about character. It's not just about accomplishments. So part of what we're looking at is moving past just praising the product, because that's going to come and go. We'll succeed, we'll fail, we'll get the A, we'll get the C. It's all going to be different. But really looking for the character of, it's called growth mindset, has a lot to do with grit and perseverance, catching people at the best of what they put into it versus the product that they deliver on. So that's what we look at when we praise and we acknowledge and we look for the good. It's not the trophy, it's the process that they went to, the determination, the perseverance, the hard work. Uh, they're willing to pick themselves up even if they screwed up the first 10 times, and praising that versus the result.
Yeah, and so often now we've come in where recently it was like everybody gets a trophy. You get a participation trophy, and then and that's still result oriented, right? As opposed to how each kid dove in there and rolled up their sleeves and participated in the learnings along the way. So I love what you're doing. Not everyone gets they all get a trophy, but it's not a material trophy. It's the experience and supporting how they showed up
Mhm.
and the positivity of that. I love that. I love
And a
that.
lot of it is how they recognize it for themselves.
Yeah.
So they're not
Mm.
looking externally for it. They're looking at they can catch themselves at their best.
Wow,
And,
that's a major shift, right?
yeah.
How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah. Well, it's a habit. And we actually give them activities. We have a workbook called Making the Best of Me. And one of those series of activities has to do with self-acknowledgement, catching yourself at the end of the day and taking time to note down what was on for you today. I sat down and talked to a friend I never talked to. That took a lot of courage. Or I took the feedback from the teacher and I didn't just throw it back and like they're crazy, and I listened to them a little bit more deeply, or my parents. So we start to work with them in building habits of self-reflection and self-acknowledgement rather than looking at outside of themselves. And just like with adults, it just takes time. It's a habit to kind of turn things around.
Mm.
We do a lot with self-talk, starting to become aware of what your self-talk is. It a negative self-talk? How do you become a friend to yourself? We tell them often, people are, we're often better friends with others than we are. If you treated others the way you treat yourself, you wouldn't have any friends left because you're treating yourself pretty cruelly. How do you become a best friend inside of yourself? So those sense of self-awareness tips is what we often train the kids up on, and they gravitate to that. We do a lot of skits. It's fun. We don't make it heavy, and they start to learn. Let me become more aware of my assets versus my failure.
I love that. And so Educare is a foundation. So you shared with me yesterday, you've got an annual $7 million budget. Is that accurate?
That's right.
Yeah. And so how in this time, for anybody listening in that's part of a nonprofit or strained for resources, how are you dealing with it right now?
Yeah. Well, about 90% of our funding comes from federal grants, from government grants. And some of them are holding strong and some of them we're waiting. We're still waiting. One of our districts are waiting to see what comes in. So that's kind of part of our question mark these days. The other parts of our funding comes from foundations. We've been very appreciative. Foundations like Annenberg Foundation, Amundsen Foundation, the Weingart Foundation, LA Times Family Fund. Over the years, they've been part of our funding source. And then we have a smaller percentage, perhaps maybe 4%, that comes from families and private donors who are behind us. So we're heavily reliant on government funding. So it's scary at times. And right now, we're watching education budgets. We're in a fundraising campaign right now to really help secure things that if the government doesn't come through all the way, we can keep doing that. And we have schools knocking on our door. Can you come here? And we're trying to do our best to cover what we have and then expand to the schools that are looking to bring us there. We don't have the
Mm.
funding yet to get out there.
And so with so much of it being remote and we need computers, what are you doing for a family that doesn't have a computer? How do
Yeah,
they stay engaged?
yeah. Well, one of our grants was from the Amazon Foundation was to help purchase computers and laptops, staff, families. LUSD has stepped up big time. And I mentioned this to you yesterday, Nick. Not only do they have free food giveaways every day, it's called Grab and Go. 60 sites across the city that any kid, any family can come. They've served over 25 million meals since COVID came on. Along with that, they've had funding, and we've been part of that with them, is that no family should not have the software and the hardware at home to do the technology. And they shouldn't have the links and the networks in their neighborhood. So with a lot of support from a lot of community partners, it's now, I think, over 90% of LAUSD kids have the technology in their homes that they need. Now, getting them to use it and to get involved with it, that's the whole other question. That's where we come in, is how do you make it engaging and active and fun for the kids? And that's what we're working on a lot these days.
So reentry, right? We talked a little bit this before we got started officially at 1 o'clock. What do you see as reentry? How do you see kids re-engaging in school, and what's that
Yeah.
going to look like?
Yeah, it's being discussed in many places. Summer, in terms of LA public schools, is going to be all virtual. It's going to be a lot of programming though, because a lot of kids need to get their core academic credits in. So there's going to be a lot of course load over the summer. We're going to do a lot of enrichment, the arts, the musics, the recreations, and do that virtually. It's not clear yet, and it's moving. They're looking at very much with the health departments. When can we go face to face inside of the schools? Most likely the talk from the superintendent's office in LAUSD, it's likely going to be a blended type of model where kids may come 2 days a week in and then 3 days virtual, vice versa. Maybe a half a day in face to face, the other half, they switch the other kids who are home. You come in the afternoon, we come in the morning. That's all to be determined, and how to keep safe distancing and how to do lunches and food, health, all of that's being worked out. But best we can tell, a lot's going to be virtual for several months to come. So we're engaged with doing a lot of our developing exciting programs virtually. We have a library right now. Every week we come out with about 80 new classes across all types of education that Educare
From your
develops.
staff, from
Just
your
from our
team.
staff. Our team
Hmm.
is like, they become computer producers all of a sudden, create everything, science and music and dance, and everything is happening now virtually. And we have now a library where kids can come in at different times and pull that out. And it's going to continue through the summer.
Does anybody have access to that? I mean, is it on your website, that
It's on our,
curriculum?
yes,
So if
Educare's
anybody
on the,
listening in wanted to look at the menu, they could pull one of the curriculum activities?
exactly, exactly. We're going to do it live this summer, but these are now pre-recorded and people can come in. In fact, we have workshops. We're going to do one tomorrow. In fact, there's one actually happening this afternoon for parents and educators. We do one for parents and educators live every week. We do one in Spanish for parents every week. And it all has to do with communication skills. A lot of what we were talking about, we're training parents and educators throughout the summer too. And it's open for everyone, no charge.
Mm. Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And how about physical activity? Have you thought about playing fields and how you start to work that
Yeah,
out?
yeah. As far as we can tell, and I've been following the lead that I've been hearing from district officials, particularly for the younger kids, um, a lot of it's going to be very different. I've been hearing a lot about individualized athletics. Here's your hula hoop. Here's your soccer ball. And so some sports, we know tennis, golf, others, not many kids are participating in. Those are easier to keep social distance. When you get into sports like basketball, you get into football, and you get into soccer, it's tough to do that.
Mm.
But they're looking how they can do, like we have fitness and recreation that we're doing online now. But the social contact is what the kids love. When you play sports, it's not just I'm getting fit, but I'm hanging out with my friends. So that's the hard part. They haven't cracked that one yet. We don't know where
Yeah.
that's going to tend. We have kids right now. We've heard day camps are starting to open up in some neighborhoods. We may be doing a virtual summer camp, but we're not going to do a face-to-face summer camp. But some summer camps are looking how they safely open. And I can't speak to if that's a good idea or not. I just don't know enough about it.
Yeah. Well, in any organization, there's a politics, right? And as you message yourself and you message the great work that you're doing, um, you're leading with your heart, and that can sometimes alienate people that may feel uncomfortable in that space.
Yeah.
As part of your branding messaging campaign, are you concerned that you may alienate people in your process? How do you deal with that for those that want to be absolutely vulnerable in the expression of what they're doing and the promotion of it, but there's that reticence?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if you're talking in terms of what's happening now with Black Lives Matter and social injustice, or just in
It's
general.
wide
Just
open, however
yeah,
you want to field that question.
yeah. Well, we've often faced uh, pushback at times when we talk about teaching from the heart, and now it's a wave. It's called social emotional learning. Educare was a pioneer 30 years ago into what's now very much called upon, is that we have to teach the whole child. We can't just teach the head. You have to teach the heart. And it's been said, it's a famous quote by Aristotle, teaching the mind without teaching the heart is not teaching at all. This is a whole human being. So at first, we were thought, often as people going, what, why? I said, well, do you want your kid to be happy? Do you want your kid to be healthy? Do you want your kid to navigate life with kindness and understanding for himself and other people? That's what this is about. And people go, of course we want that. So they understood where we were coming from, because it was no different than what any parent, any teacher really wanted for their kids. It was just out of the norm of academic instruction. And now we have to teach the whole child. It's been accepted. And then when we get into social injustice and the blinders that people might find and go, well, how's that affecting my child? My child's not in the inner city. Well, we kind of look at it as the message we have is this is a family of human beings, family of a city. Uh, and part of my view is there's a healing time now for white leaders like myself to really understand that this movement that's happening now for social justice is for us, not just for people of color. That this is going to probably bring us more into our sense of community and understanding. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity for everyone to pull together. And I think a lot of people, some people may dismiss it and go, okay, Educare, see you later. And other people go, you speak to what I believe in too, that all these kids are our kids. It's not just my kid, my neighborhood, they're all my kids. And that's the way we've already looked at all those kids. So when we bring kids, we brought kids from private schools and public schools together for our programs. That's some of the highest work we get to do, is kids got to learn from other cultures. So when we brought kids from Palisades High, from Crenshaw High, go, guess what? Let's work together. Let's talk together. Let's live together. Let's learn together. And then they got out in the community as service leaders together, which was one of the highlights of our history. When kids from different communities serve together, go, wait a minute. Okay, we're young leaders. Let's do it. Let's make our community better, no matter what community it is. So that's part of my dream. This is a big humanity. These are our kids. We can love them all. Let's give them what they need. That's pretty simple from my point of view. It's not easy, but that's the heart of what we come from. They're all our kids. So let's make it for all of them.
I love it. I love it. So a question came up: how can we support the work that you're doing? Are there
Yeah.
corporate sponsors that you're looking for? You referenced a fundraising drive that's coming up, but if someone just wants to, they don't have the money to do it. I mean, obviously, money. How can people give? But
Yeah.
let's start there.
Many ways. I mean, people give of their time. They volunteer. People give of their expertise. What is right up in front, people give of their dollars, because that's big for us. We're in a spring campaign, and our fiscal year ends June, and we're right in the midst of how much program can we do through the summer into the fall, and a lot of it's depending on contributions. So I would just, if it warms your heart and you're part of what you believe this is about, help us, in terms of contributing. That would be of great assistance to Educare.
And where would they do that? How would they physically do that? Is there a website? Is there
Yeah.
something that
educarefoundation.com. And on that website, there's a donation page. They can contact me directly, stu@educarefoundation.com, or they can go right to the website. And we just welcome that. Our board stepped up, and they're now matching funds for the next 2 weeks, up to $20,000. And so we're just putting the word out to go help us so we can bring out more programs this summer.
Mm. And I would imagine, so the program itinerary is already, is that set? That whole arc is established. So if someone wants to, if they have an expertise in a certain skill set that they could participate in and slot themselves in that arc, where would they find that?
They would contact, on there you'll see addresses to contact, or just contact me personally, and I'll connect you inside of who an organization. We have volunteers coming in, we have specialists coming in to work with us. There's a lot of wonderful stories how people have contributed of their expertise, financial literacy, music, arts, many different ways people have kind of come in and worked alongside of us.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of Laura and Nick Segal, we're good for 2,500. So let's help with that
Nick,
one thing. There we
oh
go.
my gosh. Thank you, my friend.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. So in closing, if I'm a kid, what would you say to me right now at this time?
Any kid.
Any kid. The kid in us
Okay.
all, the kid in me.
Okay. I'm talking to the kid in me too, as I
Good.
answer to that question.
Great.
Go light, go easy. Don't expect yourself to have it all every day in good shape. Be easy with yourself. Look for people who love you. There's a lot of people out there. Open to receive of that. Be generous with what you have to offer. Serve other people. You get a lot of joy because I see our kids serving people right now out in the communities, helping other people. So maybe in your house, serve somebody in your house, and carry hope inside of you that people care enough that we're going to pull through this. And the way I always thought, we're going to pull through it stronger together if we really believe and hold that together. So and lean on me. If you're my son, I'll say, I'm here. Lean on me a little bit. And I'll do my best. I'll do my best for you. That's what I would tell him.
Wow,
And I'll probably tell him I love you all over the place, but I would say those words.
I heard that through the tone of your voice, my friend. So thank you all so much, Stu. Thank you so much for sharing your heart, sharing the wisdom of who you are, and the great work that you're doing. This will be posted tomorrow for those of you that would like to hear an excerpt of this or share it with somebody else on my YouTube channel. And to all of us, let's take these wisdoms and honor ourselves first, and honor that kid inside of us, and look for the good that we're doing as opposed to beating ourselves up for the things that we should be doing. So with that, thank you all for tuning in, and have a beautiful day. Thank you, my friend Stu.
Thanks, everyone.